Good evening and welcome to this board meeting. I will call this regular board meeting of the USD253 Board of Education to order. We have 7 board members present. I would entertain a motion to adopt the agenda, please.
I move for approval of the agenda as presented.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Please cast your votes. Motion passes 7-0. Thank you. That takes us to item 3A, recognition of National Teacher Appreciation Week. The board would like to recognize National Teacher Appreciation Week, which is usually designated the first full week of May, but is May 8th through May 12th in 2023. This is a week when teachers get the extra credit they deserve. National Teachers Day was celebrated on May 2nd. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Item 3B, public comments. Public comments will be allowed with a duration of 3 minutes per speaker to be timed by the board clerk, and speakers must sign up for in-person public comment by 1 p.m. the day of the board meeting. The public comment by email or remote not be accepted, and that those giving public comment not approach the board or move past the podium. No handouts will be allowed, but such materials may be emailed in advance to the board clerk for distribution to the board. And the public comment may not include reference to names of specific students and/or personal matters which would potentially violate an individual's privacy, and that the board will not engage in discussion at this time except to gain clarification. Anyone wishing to provide public comments should complete the request form on our website, and the form needs to be completed by 1 p.m. on Wednesday, the day of the board meeting. Casey, do we have any public comment this evening? We do have one this evening. Marina Goza, please come forward.
Requesting a policy be put in place. So this is about the response the school had to the loss of senior Emily Goza on August 30th, 2022. Every student obviously has their own personal response to my sister Emily Goza's death, at least the students who had any idea she was even a student at EHS. The school administrators did not choose to publicly acknowledge her death to the community. While Emily was on life support in the hospital, the school held a pep rally for the football team. At this pep rally, one of Emily's friends wished to hold a moment of silence for Emily. Emily's friend asked the principal for permission to have this moment of reflection and respect for my sister. Through this moment of silence, she was denied because the admin said it would be too triggering. Despite the denial to the request, Emily's friends recruited fellow seniors to do a moment of silence in place of their traditional senior chant. I was personally appreciative that the students who knew Emily found a way to show their care for my sister despite having to act against the wishes of the administration. Hopefully, admin knows now that not having the support of the school and community is what truly is too triggering. Often when I talk about the loss of Emily at school, I get the same response from people. Emily who is Emily? I strongly believe that should not be how people respond when the loss of one of these students is brought up. The reaction to the loss of Emily is especially absurd when the reaction of the school body to another recent death at the school is taken into account. The entirety of the staff and students showed love and support for them and their family, while my sister wasn't even acknowledged as a student. Everyone should know Emily's name when it's spoken, just like the other student, because both are equally as significant as members of the educational community. Emily went to school at EHS for 3 consecutive school years, her senior year making a total of 4. The response by school leadership doesn't reflect this. Instead, students' responses have been cold and uncaring. One of the many students who didn't know Emily personally but knows of her has been quoted saying that everyone should just get over her death, as well as she was insignificant and that she didn't matter. Honestly, at this point, I strongly believe that this is where a lot of members of our school community stand. Her accident occurred on a Tuesday morning while she was on her way to school. How could students not know of her? It probably has a lot to do with the fact that not the only one of the many articles addressing her accident even addressed that she was even a student at EHS. The administration seems to pick and choose which students they want to care about. In a school which says every student matters, how is this possible? But since nobody at the school seems to care about the loss of Emily, let me tell you a little bit about her life. Emily was an exemplary student. She didn't participate in any extracurricular activities, but she cared very much about her education and was set to be the first of her family to graduate. If it wasn't for the accident, Emily would have graduated this past December. She would be proudly walking across the stage and receiving her diploma this weekend with all of her other classmates. A little more about Emily. Emily didn't have the best upbringing imaginable. She came from a very underprivileged family. People typically would look at her and her circumstances and tell her things like, you won't amount to anything, you might as well drop out now, and that they didn't expect much from her. Despite what people thought of her, Emily proved to be resilient and continued in her studies. She had planned to become an esthetician after high school. I bring all of this up. School policy. Or kids that are privileged and must be set in stone. I understand that the loss of my sister was heavily overshadowed by the scandal involving the football team this past fall and other events that made the start of the school year hectic. But it is exactly because our school administration is often too busy with so many different problems that we need a policy that can support students' needs and help staff and school leadership respond equally, efficiently, and with the care every student at EHS deserves. Since the school obviously couldn't get their act together then and address the loss of Emily, it is time for Emporia High School to finally do that now. It might sound aggressive, but every time there is a tragedy, the school district has only one narrow opportunity to respond and support members of our learning community. If that opportunity is missed, our community is left damaged. It has been over 7 months since my sister's accident. The damage is already way past returning from. So with that being said, I must ask again that a policy stating all students' death, no matter the circumstances surrounding their death, or whether they come from families that are privileged or underprivileged, or if they are involved in athletics or nothing at all, if they have good grades or bad grades, be treated fairly and their families be offered the same level of respect and support. This policy needs to be created and implemented as soon as possible. I strongly hope and pray that no other student must advocate for the loss of any other students the way I must for Emily now. Thank you.
Thank you, Marina. That takes us to the consent agenda. Items on the consent agenda are considered by the Board of Education to be routine business items. Approval of the items may be made by a single motion, second, and majority vote with no separate discussion of any item listed. Should a member of the board desire to discuss any item, at his or her request, it will be removed from the consent agenda and considered separately. Does anyone have anything they'd like to remove from the agenda this evening? If not, I would take a motion to approve, please.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Please cast your votes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you. And as always, you'll see there are many donations listed on our consent agenda this evening, thanks to our generous community. That takes us to item 6A, teaching and learning items, 2022-2023 William Allen White School Improvement Update.
Mr. Telkirk, principal of William Allen White, is here along with staff members. He will introduce.
Good evening. I feel fortunate because I have a very strong team of William Allen White educators behind me, and I get the easy job of just introducing and smiling. So first introduce my William Allen White staff that is kind of reflective of a variety of positions this evening. So Ashley Clark, you'll recognize probably a few from previous presentations, and then we have some new faces as well. Ashley Clark is our building improvement representative, kind of our KISA rep for our building, and is also our stream and library teacher. Heidi Harn is a second grade teacher for us, but fifth grade has had a myriad of experience, but second grade most recently and loves it. Madison Gardner is one of our new faces. She's a second year teacher that teaches third grade for us. And Jessica Kellison, you might recognize, she joined our team this year in Way of Village and has been an excellent member for us as a student support specialist. So I'm excited to allow them to kind of share a little bit more about our year and all the exciting stuff that's happened. And I think we're doing really good stuff, and it's student-centered, which is what's exciting for me. My one job today is to start with our why. So I want to kind of set the groundwork. So Dating back probably 4 years ago, 5 years ago, William Allen White entered into redesign, and we spent, a better part of an entire morning on a professional learning day developing what is our why. And it wasn't my why, it wasn't a kindergarten teacher's why, a fifth grade teacher's why. We, like, every word was analyzed to figure out what do we do, what we do. Show up each work or each day to work and really pour our hearts into students. And so our why has stayed consistent throughout these past few years. Our why is to empower learners through hope and relationships to positively impact community. You'll notice what's there and highlighted is hope and community. What's not there is math or reading or science or social studies. And that is not to say that each of those individually aren't important, but our goal and our conversation at the time and still today, and I think you'll hear that in some of what we share, is we're building future citizens. And we take that very seriously, and we're excited to have a part to play in that with our families and community. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it on to Ms. Clark to share a little bit more. Thank you.
Good evening. I am here to share our building goals that we set up back in the fall, and then we've been working on them throughout this year, and they will continue to be adjusted throughout the next 5 years in our cycle. Our math goal is to, by the end of May this year, have a 6% increase of students moving above the 30th percentile on A math. Our reading goal is also this very similar, have 6% increase of students moving above the 30th percentile on our A reading. And then for our social emotional goal, we want to develop and implement a consistent building-wide approach to empower the effective use of self-regulation strategies across all settings, whether it's classroom, gym, playground, library, with 80% effective implementation.
Good evening. I'm going to share about our reading goals, and most recently we have implemented MERP school-wide. 10 to 15 minutes at this point in time is the expectation for each grade level. And MERP is a monitored independent reading practice time, and so students are choosing a book that they are interested in at their level that they can read independently. And then while students are reading independently, as the teacher, I get to pull students individually and listen to them read and coach them in their reading and listen for their comprehension, ask them questions, and really help guide them into books that might also pique their interest. Okay, you really liked this book. Here's something else that we might try next time. And just kind of build that relationship with our kids. And in my classroom, I have our little reluctant reader. And every day when it's MERP time, he says, "Can I read with you today? Is it my turn?" And so I think for every teacher, that's that moment where you realize you're making a difference. And this kid that didn't want to read is now excited because he's understanding the joy of a book and he's building that relationship with somebody through reading. We are also continuing with our flex groups where we pull groups of students to meet them at their levels. And we have also been using our PLC and data talks to target our students that are really on that cusp of, we call them tier 2 or bubble students, like you're really close to that 30th percentile and we want to push you a little bit more to get you there, or you're right at that 30th, but we want to make sure you stay there. And so we've been working to identify those students and make sure that we are providing the supports that they need. And we've also offered them extended learning time. And so those students were able to stay after school a couple days a week and get extra practice in comprehension and fluency and word study. And then on our next slide, we have our reading data for you. And so we have pulled our A reading scores. This is a test that's given to 2nd through 5th grade. And our goal is to move 6% of those bubble students above that 30th percentile. So those kids that weren't quite there, we want to push them to that 30th percentile or higher. And I'm very excited to announce that we actually met that goal from fall to winter. And so we are very anxiously awaiting our spring data to see, did we maintain that? Did we push them further? And then using that data to see, okay, so what are we going to do with that to make sure we keep going next year and to get another 6%. To move up and to maintain those 6 that stayed there and the ones that are meeting and exceeding. Also, another positive from our reading data was that all but one of our grade levels that took A reading moved students. had more students in the winter that met that 30th percentile than we did in the fall. So we were really excited about that.
All right, so I am presenting on math. I first just want to say that we are very thankful and that we got an approved resource, which is the Envision Math, which we are implementing for kindergarten through fifth. Some of the ways that we're implementing this is through Envision professional training, grade level, and district PLC time, where we have discussions about strengths and challenges with, or that we are having with the Envision curriculum or resource. Through these discussions, actually, we realized that we needed more training, which Judy Stanley graciously provided us in-person training in January. After that January training, I feel like most of us were a lot more confident with using Envision Math and all of the resources and tools that it has to offer. Another action step that we take using Envision is we are talking in data talks about what is working and what isn't working as far as grade level goes. And then using that data to target those tier 2 bubble students like Heidi was just explaining. We really want to push those tier 2 bubble students up more into the 30th or above percentile. We're doing that through extended learning. So our extended learning for math focused on fluency and number sense. And so with all of that being said, reviewing our math data, we realized or reviewed that we improved by 2% from fall to winter for our students that are at or above the 30th percentile. For winter, we also had kindergarten take the A math for the first time, so that increased our students taking the assessment. We did realize that typically there's a 1 to 2 year implementation dip with a curriculum or resource. So we're really looking forward to reviewing the spring data and making the adjustments to hopefully help our students be more successful next year.
Okay, I'll be presenting tonight on social emotional learning, and our main goal was to hit every student in our building, not just our tier 3s, but to implement it consistently across all grade levels and all students. And we did that by teaching self-regulation strategies to be used within the classroom and with any classroom, whether it be gym, the classroom teacher. So we did that. We developed and identified specific strategies to be taught and used, specifically based on every child, not just the tier 3s. We identified safe spaces and self-regulation tools in all settings. So every classroom has a safe space that they can utilize when they need. We clearly identified parameters for tier 3 and tier 3 SEL students. We consistently implemented implementation of tier 3 SEL skills goals. We're still working on that the best we can. And we consistently have our classroom teachers utilize second step in their classrooms for tier 1 students. These are our successes. We have a lot. We couldn't fit them all in this slide. So this is the top 4 that we picked. We had a dramatic reduction of office referrals, which was awesome. Student leadership and collaboration across grades. We have 5th graders work with 1st graders. They read to them. They work on collaboration, just skills that some of our 1st graders lack that our 5th graders are good at. They work with them in the mornings. We have reading buddies. That's 3rd grade and kindergarten. They read together. And then we have enhanced staff collaboration with the review of data and goal setting. We do that across all data, whether that be math, reading, SEL. We've really dove into our goal setting and our data. And then we achieved our goals of the 6% moving up, and we're hoping to continue that into the spring. We didn't have the data when we put this together, so that should be in very soon.
With all of that, our future steps, our plans for next year, we are planning to develop an SEL staff team that will help create a rubric to help us have a measurable tool for our SEL data. We will continue our grade level and vertical data reviews based on the achievements that we make now. and then our first round of assessments in the fall. We will continue to review and adjust our current goals to address our gaps and our needs as our students have summer and as we have changes in our new students move in and out. And then finally, we will have professional development and implementation of the new ELA district curricular resource next year that we look forward to using to help further our goals. Are there any questions?
I have a question about the extended learning. So do you reach out to the parents first, and how much buy-in do you get, and how many of those kids would rather be at Boys and Girls Club, but are willing to put in the time? I just had some questions about that.
So when we identified those students, a letter did go home to parents. They had to sign that, yes, I'm willing to let my child stay for that. It's 30 minutes twice a week. And my second graders, honestly, every day, is it math club day? We don't call it tutoring. We don't call it extended learning with our kids. We call it math club or reading club. And so then it's something kind of special that they get to stay for. And then those kids that go to Boys and Girls just go to Boys and Girls when they're finished. And then the ones that get picked up just get picked up a little bit later. But within my classroom, my kids are really excited to go because it sounds like a special club that I get to be a part of. And every day they want to know, is it today?
And were most of the parents on board with that?
The ones that I had referred, I think there was one I didn't hear back from, but my others had all signed on.
Awesome.
Mr. Kirk maybe could speak more to the building, but I know within my classroom, that's my
It's really great.
results.
Thank you.
I would say in general, it's really dependent upon schedule
Sure.
and ability, but
Right.
we have very good feedback and participation from most of our parents.
Right.
Sometimes it takes calls because a lot of times our initial notes get lost in the cavern of
No one opens their
backpack.
bank statement. Like,
Right?
I know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you can
Yeah,
appreciate
I
that.
know.
So,
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, with the right communication and connection, we've had very good turnout.
Great.
While I'm up here, I just want to take an opportunity to say thank you to this group. They chose to come up here on their own time, worked really hard. They actually taught me a new Canva, new presentation. I was like, man, the Google Slides just aren't doing it for me. We've got this. So anyway, I'm still learning, and these folks have done a tremendous job. And also, just while I'm up here, I want to thank all of the wonderful staff at William Allen White. I feel fortunate every day to be able to come to work there. Childhood home, and it's a place as a home as an adult. So I'm grateful to our team and this team here, but in general to the staff and teachers that we have every day that works here. It makes it a great place.
Thank you. What other questions do we have this evening?
I was just going to ask, how would you term the adoption of the new resources? How's that gone? I mean, it's always tough and a challenge.
I mean, you said you felt better after January.
Yes, the in-person training definitely made a difference as far as third grade, because that's all that I meet with. But I feel like in-person definitely makes a difference. I think that being able to have access to all the tools and knowing what the tools are there for and how we can use them help us help our students succeed. If we don't know the usage or how to use the resources that are provided for us, it makes it really difficult and very overwhelming to try and figure it out on our own. So I look forward to in-person ELA training.
Anything else? All right. Well, thanks for a great presentation, and thanks for all you do. Okay. 6B, Memorandum of Understanding with Kansas National Education Association for mentoring.
Mrs. Judy Stanley, Assistant Superintendent of Teaching, Learning, and Student Services, will present the MOU tonight.
Okay, so to be a mentor in Kansas, KSDE requires that you go through an annual mentor training before you meet with your mentee for the first time. We would like to partner with KNEA for that mentor training this year. Dr. Harder, Erica Huggard, and I met with the state KNEA rep who oversees their mentor training program. She walked through what the modules look like, the topics that are covered, and it really does give a really nice overview and of support for mentor teachers and how they can better support their mentee teachers. And so what you have in front of you is the MOU for that mentor training that would happen this summer. The MOU requires us to have a local association coordinator. That would be Erica Huggard moving into this year. We're going to try this as a pilot year. The MOU outlines her responsibilities, our responsibilities as a district, which would include paying the mentor teachers. They would be paid extra duty rate for that first initial day. And then they also get a stipend for being a mentor. So there's some modules that they would complete on their own before they actually meet with the mentee. That would be one of those expectations and in terms of meeting their stipend. And then it also outlines the expectations of KNEA. We've already been partnering with Erica. The principals identified potential mentors this year. She reached out to all of them. She's got confirmation on who can and who can't. And so then the principals, we were working on matching the mentees with their mentors. And so we're just asking your approval so that we can move forward and get this ball rolling.
Does anyone have any questions for Judy tonight?
Any idea how many people this might involve?
Oh, depends on how many. So it really is for our teachers on an initial license. In order for them to move to a professional license, they have to have 2 years of mentoring. Right now, I actually looked at our spreadsheet with all of our new certified staff on it. We have quite a few that are starting with professional licenses, so those won't need a mentor per se like this. So it could be anywhere from 20 to 40. Yeah. We really try to match those mentors up with people that are teaching the same thing. So if I'm a first grade teacher, I'll get a first grade mentor. There might be times that it might be, we want them in the same building, but if that matchup needs to be from a different building or a different grade level simply because we don't have enough, then that's what we would do.
Any other questions? This is an action item this evening.
I move to approve the memorandum of understanding with KNEA for mentor training as submitted.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Please cast your votes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you. Item 7A, construction update from McCown Gordon.
Eric Wolsey, McCown Gordon Senior Project Manager, is here for the monthly update on construction.
Good evening. Good evening. Here. Try this again. Nope. It looks like it's on. I'll just talk louder. How's that? All right. So again, for the monthly update, as Dr. Harder said. So the timeline for the middle school and Village Elementary, both those projects are tracking really well. Still, the goal is to have Village turned over by the time summer is over, and kids start back this fall. And then the middle school portions of that will be turned over. Goal is going to be science wing, the commons area, and the admin area. The gym will come later, probably late Q3, early Q4 will be when that is handed over. And then just a quick timeline, Timmerman and Riverside, we will mobilize additional next week. And then that following week when school is out, we will get started in the renovation area in both those classrooms. And then William Allen White, just wanted to touch on that, is actually HGK had provided Mr. Kirk some drawings through some conversations that were had to have a meeting with staff and get the conversation started there. Some things that were discussed were, hey, the music room, does it make sense to potentially go out in the new addition to keep that beautiful noise away from the kids that are learning in all the other classroom areas? And then the media center, where its current location at, does that make the most sense? Do we look at moving it to a larger room within the school and kind of rearranging and putting kindergarten in the same area? So those are conversations that were had. Created some additional conversations that Mr. Kirk provided some feedback to HGK. So I know HGK is working on fine tuning some things that came out of those meetings, and then that design will continue to progress. So, all right. So the fun stuff, all the pictures, we've got some drone pictures here, Emporia Middle School. So the left picture is of the new Science Wing edition. So you can see all the final grading is done. There's we put down some erosion mat, some seating. So that is complete there. Really in there, finishes and flooring are ongoing and wrapping up. So we're going to push for towards the end of this month to do some final inspections in there, and then also punch list. And then really once school is out, we've got a couple areas where we tie into the existing school. So we'll take those temp walls down and get everything finished in there. So it'll be a seamless transition when kids come back in the fall. And then these photos are just on the right side is just a typical classroom showing some carpet and the finishes ongoing there. The left picture, that's the new gymnasium. It'd be the south egress sets of doors with stairs there. Site work is ongoing. Hopefully, if the weather holds out, the majority of the sidewalks will be placed tomorrow. And then as soon as that's done, they'll start fine grading the parking lot, and we'll start placing some paving for that parking lot as well. A lot of summer work that we have going on actually in the middle school is we've got fire alarm replacement. So as soon as school's out, we'll be going through there, upgrading devices, updating some wiring, and then HVAC control replacement as well will be ongoing. So done some work behind the scenes when school is out, days off to get wire pulled. We got to formally go switch out all the devices in those, and that'll happen through the summer. And then the last thing is just the gym floor that will probably start sometime in July. So a lot of good things happening at the middle school. Village Elementary. So these pictures are actually a lot of date. That left picture is actually the old multi-purpose room, which will now be the new media center. So if you're thinking there was no natural light that came into that space. So we cut in 2 decent sized openings there to allow that natural light to come in the space, made a huge impact. So both of those pictures you see there, one's on the interior, one is on the exterior. That masonry still had to be washed down to where it'll match a little bit better than what it is. And then the next slide that is on the left is still in that where that new media center will be. And actually the majority of that drywall finishing is complete. So as soon as they get the rest of it wrapped up, they'll do primer and first coat of paint. They've already started hanging the hanger wires for all the ceiling grid that goes in there too. So pushing to hopefully, it won't benefit you this school year, but hopefully that will be done close to the end of June. And then just the right side, I know the much needed parking over there. So that lot is finished and striped, and actually had a decent stand of grass there with all the precipitation that we've had. So see, and then it kind of touched on Riverside and Timmerman. So we actually held groundbreakings number 7 and 8 today for both of those schools. And then, like I said, the week of, it'll be the 22nd is when we'll truly start the renovation, as well as the addition at both of those. So that's a lot of information. Any questions as it pertains to the timeline or questions on the specific schools?
You know, Eric, sometimes it's the little things, and I'm looking at the middle school and having a designated activity center entrance signage. Oh my gosh, amazing.
Yes, it will be easy to find your way when you show up, and yeah, you'll know which way to go. It'll be very nice at the end of the day.
I did wonder when we were at Riverside today, we kind of looked at the kids were outside, and those classrooms I think are going to extend out onto, there's like a current concrete pad where they play that basketball-like
Correct.
game. I'm sure we're losing a lot of that. So are we pouring a pad somewhere else?
So currently we are not.
That's not in our scope right now?
That is not
Okay.
in the scope
So
right
something
now.
we probably
So
need to consider in capital outlay then.
the plan is we will save those
Thingies,
goals.
right?
Well,
Yeah,
yes, I'm
right,
not sure
yeah.
of the proper term, but yes, for
Okay.
installation at another location.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then on the stairs at middle school, those are super impressive.
Yes.
I walked by those the other day. What's the rating on those? How long? You know, I always feel like that kind of stair cracks and crumbles eventually over time with the weather. Like, how long should they last?
They should last quite a while. I mean,
Okay.
they're solid concrete. I mean,
Okay.
there's gravel underneath them, so it's not a full. I guess I should rephrase that. It's not full depth concrete, but there is a substantial amount of concrete in those. A lot of reinforcing, and can't remember if those have a fiber mesh in them as well.
Oh,
But
wow. Okay.
if they do, that helps
Helps
hold
too.
it all together
Okay.
as well.
Thank you.
You bet.
Anybody else?
Eric, on building materials, are they staying stable or change? I mean, any trends you're seeing right now?
Yeah, so items are still increasing. It is, it's hit or miss sometimes. We're still seeing copper materials go up. Steel materials have come down a little. There's still, in general, everything is still increasing, but is not as drastically as what we were seeing, say, a year ago. We're still working with the trades to, if there's a different material out there that either you get the same look, same functionality, but a better cost. We're still working through all that with the trades that we work with on a daily basis. Does that answer your question? Okay.
Hey, thank you
Okay.
very much.
You bet.
Yep. Have a good night. Travel
Thanks, you too.
safely.
Thanks.
Item 7B, approval of 2023-2024 student handbooks.
Right. We have three very excited administrators coming to the podium. Jamie Dakin, Walnut Elementary Principal. Mr. Brad Jones, Emporia Middle School Assistant Principal. Trevor Matthews, Emporia High Assistant Principal.
Oh. Anyway, thank you, Mr. Giffen, because we had no clue that you spent so much time on this. But anyway, all right. So I am just supposed to highlight some of the more significant changes. One of the changes was that we wanted to add when students withdraw. We were having some concerns with not necessarily we would withdraw them and then it would take a lot of time sometimes for them to enroll at another building, and so we wanted to add that students will not be withdrawn from the record management system until we receive records from their school that they're enrolling in, so that we don't lose touch and make sure that that actually happens. Another change, this was under the tardy section where it talked about if they had excessive tardies, they would have potential Friday school or detention. And we don't do that with elementary kids, so we just wanted to take that out. Another place was to replace minor and major behaviors with the updated behaviors that the SSSs and principals worked on over the last summer. We updated those and we just switched them out, updated them in the handbook with the recent ones that we went over last summer. Another is the hazing policy. That's a recent policy adoption, and those are going to be added in all of the handbooks, and so that is in there. Also, new language from the policy JCE. That's another recent change in board policy, and so that was changed or updated. On page 20, we also added some information about personal communication devices, and we really just kind of mimicked what the middle school had in theirs and added the smartwatch and wearable technology part as well. That's about all of the major changes. Did you have any questions about any of the things that we had in there?
Any questions about the elementary handbook? Okay.
All right.
Sorry, I have a question.
Okay.
I was trying to defer to see if anyone else did first, so I wouldn't have to go first. But under tardies, we struck Friday school as a remedial action for unexcused tardiness. And I'm not for or against, but can you just tell me why and what the thought process is behind that?
Well, because when you're looking at an elementary student, most of the time their tardies are not due to their own actions. It's usually a guardian issue, and so we are not going to reprimand them for that. We may have tried to put some interventions in place and entice them to try to motivate their parents to get them there, but we're not going to give them a consequence.
I understand that. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Next.
Good evening. Ours is kind of a small list, and just go through that. We're removing the parent signature, guardian signature on the handbook, since we're going to do the handbooks electronically, so they'll all have access to them at all times. Right now, they're in the handbooks, and so with eHall Pass, we're going away from that. Change the language to unexcused absences to match our procedures. That was just kind of cleaning up some language. Change the language on discrimination to match our recent policy change, and also added the hazing policy. We changed the title of the incentive program to meet what we've been calling it all year long. We did change student electronic device section to add concerns that we have with changes of technology like the wearable tech. So if the students are using their watch, their iWatch or Garmin, whatever, as a watch, that's fine, but some using it for a phone or texting, and then we'll address that as it happens. Change the dress code section to add about sleeveless tops and spaghetti straps, no sunglasses, and no headgear in the building. So we've been kind of enforcing that, but it had never been in there. And then we added a section on student planners, which will replace the handbooks. It'll just be a smaller, it'll be very inexpensive, compared to the current handbooks. So, yes.
Would you like to add some information on the e-pass and how that's used?
Sure.
Okay,
All
thank
right,
you.
so we implemented eHall Pass with our 8th graders starting in January, and it's, I believe it's been very successful. We've been able to track students, how many times they've been out of the room and for how long, their location. So when they select, if they need to go to the restroom, they'll have to select like 8th grade boys bathroom. And then once the teacher approves it, it starts a timer. And then when they come back to class, it ends the time. So if we have a parent concerned about, missing instruction stuff, we can, tell them, hey, your child's been out of the classroom this many times for a total of an hour and a half this week. So it helps reinforce some of the things that we're having the conversation with parents. We can also block if we have some students that are in conflict, or we have the boyfriend, girlfriend, let's meet by the water fountain thing, then we can block them so that they cannot be in the hallway at the same time. Same way we can block how many people will be at the restroom, the water fountain, or out in the hallways in general. So that's some of the things that we've been able to do with this. So it gives us a really good idea, because teachers, when they normally write the passes, it's kind of, they sign it and then they're back to teaching. And sometimes I was even guilty myself teaching that you forget that that child's out of the room. Now they have a reminder right there in front of them. And so then it lets me know if someone's been out. We have like different elements, time if they're out. I think it's once you get to about 7 minutes, it kind of turns yellow as kind of a reminder, and then red if it exceeds that time limit.
Is that a standalone pass? Like, does each teacher have a pass, or is it tied to a cell phone? Or?
It's tied to, it's on the Chromebook. So they just log in. We have, it's saved on everyone's Chromebook. So they just log in using their Google ID. And that's how so the student will initiate the pass, and then it'll pop up on the teachers, and then they'll raise their hand like normal. Can I go to the restroom? Go ahead. And once they see it, then they'll approve it. Or they may say, wait, let me get through instruction. So
a student doesn't have like a pass that they're walking around with. It's
no.
okay.
So that way they're not having to carry planners to the bathroom or anything. For next year, they will have, I'll give each teacher some lanyards, so that if I'm walking the hallway, Mr. Martin, that we can see, all right, you're from blue team. Why are you in the 6th grade hallway? This doesn't match. So you're welcome.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Good evening, guys. We made, looks like there's several things here. A lot of them are pretty minor, just cleaning up language and things, but I'll go through and highlight some of those items. The first item you'll come across on page 5 is the one that Jamie had indicated a while ago to board policy JCE that was updated. On page 9, the hazing, the new policy. A little bit about that one is that is something that I've talked to Mr. Welch about how we can address that with our coaches. All student athletes go through, it's called coaches training. I don't know why it's called coaches training, it's for the athletes, but that's something that can be addressed with all student athletes at that time prior to any of the sports starting in the fall. We'd also talked about that's something that all coaches could address prior to their specific season starting too. On page 15, ID cards, there was a portion in there saying that they had to have that to purchase their school lunch. That's not our current practice anymore. They can just type in their student ID. Page 16, we updated the telephone number associated with that. On page 17, it said that when students arrive to the building in the morning, if they're running a little late, they have to report to the office to get a pass first. We found that was really swamping down our office in the morning to where we just have kids now report to their class and teachers just count them tardy in the class instead of swamping the office in the morning. On number 18, on page 18, there's paperwork that we have students fill out if they're going to be gone for an extended period of time. That helps them communicate with teachers. So that way they know the dates that they're going to be gone and teacher can write down their grade. Hey, I want you to make up your assignments when you come back. Check Google Classroom while you're gone. It just kind of forces that communication between the teacher and the student. Also on page 18, I believe it had our Friday school getting out at 6:30. We don't stay quite that late. I'm not sure when that was in practice, but it's out at 5:30. So just updating that. Page 19, and this hits more on what Mr. Jones was just talking about, the corridor passes. We're going to move to the eHall Pass platform next year as well. I'm looking forward to picking his brain a lot because I think there's a lot of things that they have learned already that we can pick up and maybe not have to go through that learning process as long. It'll be we'll have training. We've talked with the rep. I had a virtual meeting with him the other day, and they started building our school, so to speak, and they'll be doing some training with us as we get closer to the school year starting. And at that time, we'll have to determine how many passes are kids allowed and all the little details that come along with that. But we're very excited to move to the eHall Pass platform as well. And I like Mr. Jones's idea about the lanyards for travel. I think that's a great idea. On page 22, just updating the hours of the library. On page 28, we updated the graduation skills. It had the 4 skill areas there. So we updated that so that it is now current. On page 28, if it is possible for students not to have to attend CAP if they are not enrolled in a full class schedule. So if they don't have classes till the afternoon, they're not required to come in at the beginning of the day for CAP, but they have to have permission from their parents to do that. So this is just making it require the parents' permission. Also on page 28, it talks about it referred to the corridor passes. Again, we won't have those because it will be the eHall Pass. And then on page 33, we updated the language regarding the ability of exchange students to earn a diploma from Emporia High School. And I believe that's it. What questions do you have?
Any questions? I know we all have reviewed these already, but.
I have a question about the hall, kind of came to mind while you were speaking. So if a student gets this electronic pass and they leave and they don't come back, let's pretend for a second that the teacher doesn't see the notification and they're just teaching and it's 20, 30 minutes later. Is there some sort of notification that goes to administration to say, hey, John or Jane is wandering the halls?
Can I phone a friend? Is that
Yeah,
is that
you
okay?
you can totally use a lifeline.
I've not got to that part of the training yet. I'm not sure.
Sorry, yeah.
Not a notification system. The teacher will still see that on their laptop, and then they can do a write-up or referral based on that. Sometimes it happens that the student comes back and the teacher doesn't see them come back and knows that, but they can go in and correct those times on themselves. So.
I also know that there's reports that you can run, which students have been gone for more than 10 minutes from class, and I'll compile a list to where you can maybe visit with those students if you need to.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Any other questions tonight? Okay.
All right, thank you.
This is another action item. So what are the wishes of the board this evening? Thanks, everybody.
I will move to approve the elementary, middle school, and high school student handbooks for the 2023 to 2024 school year as submitted.
Second.
Thank you. Motion and a second. Please cast your votes. Bumped.
Motion passes 7-0.
Okay. Item 7C, purchase of 2 school buses.
Dr. David McGehee, Interim Assistant Superintendent of Business Operations, has the next 2 business items.
Was anybody else thinking about those e-passes and thinking back to being in school and like, I'm glad we didn't have those when I was out roaming the halls? That's what I was thinking. Yeah, this item in capital outlay, we budget for 2 school buses each year in order to keep up with our rotation and try to limit the repairs that are necessary on some of the older buses. And if you'll recall back to a year ago when we ordered a couple of buses, these prices are probably around 15-18% up from a year ago. But we are asking you to approve 2 buses, 1 regular route bus, and then 1 special education bus. The low bid for the route bus was $114,385 from Kansas Truck Equipment. And the low bid for the special education bus was $137,344 from Midwest Transit. And again, after you had approved for us to put these out for bid, we just put them on the state bid system, and it kicks back based on the specs that you put in. It kicks back that bid pretty quickly from several providers. And so this is a total of $252,729. We had been budgeting about $200,000 a year in capital outlay, so I've made a note to start ramping that up a little bit in our long range planning. But we're recommending that you approve these 2 buses. Thank you.
Any questions this evening?
I guess it's a question, but the state doesn't give us any special money toward special needs buses or anything like that, do they?
Sorry, you say special needs or special?
Special education?
We have transportation. We have funding that comes through that, but not specifically for buses. David, do you have-
I don't think there's any specific, prorated a little higher because that bus
For that,
costs
yeah.
more now.
I feel like I remember from my time on the board some time ago, some sort of scheme with either the state or federal government where we purchased buses, but we got a certain amount of it covered through a grant because we were purchasing a newer bus and getting rid of the polluting gas guzzler bus. Does anyone remember
Yeah,
this?
it wasn't a scheme,
Well, no, like
but yes, it was a deal. It was a thing.
a grant or something.
But yes, I can
Process.
never remember what it's called. But
Yeah.
Allison told us in agenda review on Friday that the state is no longer giving that. What was it called?
There was the clean diesel.
Yes.
Right, I remember
They're
that.
Now,
only-
now that funding has
yes.
moved toward
Electric
buses,
buses
and we're
only.
not to the point
Right.
of doing
Okay,
that.
so the
Yes.
scheme has changed.
Correct.
Sorry.
I
Great
once
question, Jeremy,
participated in a
yes.
scheme and changed my entire bus fleet over to compressed natural gas.
This is also an action item this evening. So if there's no further discussion, I would take a motion, please.
I did have a question. So was I correct in remembering that some buses that we had bought are not here yet? And when will these ones be here?
I am not sure about the delivery dates, but I am afraid I might not get to see them, if that gives you any indication.
Okay.
We're still waiting on them. They have 2 different delivery dates the last time but I can't remember what Michelle told me.
Okay. And then just to follow up, I someone told me this, so it might not be correct. I don't know. Is one of our special needs buses right now currently not functioning the way it should?
I'm not sure, but I can check and follow up.
Okay, because if it's not, and then we don't know when we're going to get this one, I didn't know if there was any way that we could like expedite the buses, but if we're waiting on other ones too from the past, that's kind of where I was going with that. So hopefully all the buses get here as soon as possible.
I mean, we very well might have a bus that maybe needed some repairs, but I haven't been made aware
Okay.
by our transportation director that we have any issues of not being able to serve the students.
Thank you.
Okay. This is an action item. Does anybody want to make a motion this evening?
Oh, I can do it. So I move to approve purchasing a special education bus from Midwest Transit and a conventional route bus from Kansas Truck Equipment off state bid as submitted.
Second.
Thank you for that discussion and the motion and the second. Please cast your votes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you. And now you're up again for item 70, approval of the classified salary schedule for 2023-2024.
Yes, tonight we're asking for your approval of some additional enhancements to the classified salary schedule. While some of us have had a little more time to talk through and understand this, I think it might be good for everyone else to take just a few minutes to explain kind of the history of what occurred a year ago, what's happening now, and maybe what we hope to see in the future on classified salary schedules. So if you'll recall, a year ago, the board invested in phase one of what at that time we felt was going to be a phase two set of improvements for the classified schedule. And that brought all base rates up to $15 per hour. Everybody being paid paid at least $15 per hour minimum, but the schedule still had some places on it where it didn't actually say $15 per hour. So if you were one of those people who got rounded up, you were going to be frozen at that 15 for a while if we didn't continue to make improvements. And there were about 69 individuals who also had an hourly rate on this year's schedule that was above where they would normally fall on this. It was above the step on the schedule, and what that's like, maybe that step said they should be making $18 an hour, but because they've been here long enough, they're already making $18.50 an hour. So we would call them off schedule folks. So a year ago, you invested about $1.4 million in additional resources to make those kinds of improvements. And that included, for those off-schedule folks, a 10-cent per hour increase, along with all of the changes that were actually made to the schedule to get bases up to $15 per hour. This year, we asked you to consider, we evaluated and considered options ranging in total additional cost of as little as $600,000 and as much as $1.1 million. While we would love to invest another $1.1 million into the classified salary schedule right now, as we've previously shared, based on our projected resources, we're not going to be able to be quite that aggressive, but I think we're still going to make some really nice enhancements and improvements to the schedule. So after considering all factors and also what those anticipated resources available will be, we are asking you to approve the schedule that's in the packet this evening that would raise all the base rates on the schedule up to $15 minimum. And then also there are adjustments throughout the schedule that increase rates such that now we don't have 69 people off the schedule. We've raised rates within the schedule to the point that only 10 people are still off the schedule. Sometimes one or two people to get them on the schedule can cost a couple $100,000 because you can't just get them on the schedule without changing everyone's rate of pay through there. And if those rates of pay make sense when you're comparing to other districts and across the state, that's not a reason to change your salary schedule. So we had to leave a few people off schedule. So we have all of the steps on the schedule, at least $15. A lot of the lanes significantly improved. all of them improved. And then we're leaving the increments at 10 cents at this time within the schedule. There was some conversation about 10 and 15 cents at this time based on our resources, leaving the increments at 10 cents. Again, having 10 staff members off schedule, but not giving them a 10 cent per hour raise like the off schedule people last year. We're recommending giving them the average raise across the whole schedule per hour, which is 90 cents. So if you're one of the 10 people off schedule, you can anticipate 90 cent per hour increase in your salary. So this phase 2 increase then is projected to be another $725,000 investment into the classified salary schedule improvements, and would increase, significantly salaries in all job classifications. And then those of us that have been working on this over the course of the last several months, and really it's a couple of year process, I just have worked on it for the last several months, would anticipate that this be phase 2 of, we would consider a 3-step phase of improving those classified salary schedules, and to continue to look at increments and continue to look at off-schedule folks and statewide comparisons, and invest in the schedule next year as the resources are available. So in summary, the $725,000 additional cost to bring all the rates up to that minimum of $15, and then adjust the lanes to get all but 10 people back on the schedule, and then for those off the schedule, a 90 cent per hour increase.
Okay, thanks for explaining that. We really appreciate it. Yep. What questions? I know we've all had a chance to review this. Anybody have any comments or anything they'd like to add tonight? Okay, I think it's a really good step forward. Not where we want to be yet, but we'll get there, right?
Yeah, I would just add that I hope people see this, that we've invested over $2 million over the last 2 years into salaries. And we're trying to meet the need when we hear about, underpaid employees. And this is a significant amount of money. And it's hopefully a sign of our commitment to our employees. And this is just one piece of the salary. We still have to look at certified. So this is a considerable amount of money for our budget. And especially if you look at the increases in funding that we're getting from the state, this is a big chunk of that coming already. And so I just want to make that statement that we're hearing and we're trying to make those adjustments.
I think in addition to that, when I think about my own teaching practice, the classified staff are the people that really make my work possible every day, and the work that our teachers here in Emporia are doing too. Without them, so much would not get done. So I hope that they see this as a recognition of their efforts and a continued support of the work that they're doing. So our schools would not be possible without our classified staff.
You got it. Okay.
I would move to approve the classified salary schedule for 2023-2024 as submitted.
Second.
Thank you. Motion and a second. Please cast your votes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Great. Good job, everyone. Thank you. Okay. Item 8A, board reports. On Monday, we had the Tech College Board of Trustees meeting. We had first readings of our academic master plan, some really ambitious goals in there. First reading of our budget. We also got a highlight of the 21st annual FHTC Foundation Benefit Gala, and they had a record-breaking year, raised more money than they ever have. And in addition, they also raised $50,000 to support the Wrangler Student Crisis Relief Fund, which is really, really awesome. Who else? Jeremy? No, who's else? Yeah, Jeremy.
Yep, it's just
Rec
me.
Commission. Yep.
Yep. For for the Rec Commission. We had some pretty productive meetings recently. We worked out an agreement with the city and raised the amount of compensation the Rec Center receives for running the Aquatic Center, which was something that really needed to have balanced out for a while to make sure the Rec Center stays solvent and is able to keep providing the services it does to the community. And if our future days are going to be as hot as some of our previous days, it is a great time to go to the Aquatic Center. You should all go there. And also, if you know people, perhaps young folks who could be candidates to be lifeguards, we are always hiring for lifeguards. I think I say that every summer. And there's some positions open at the Rec Center that are probably conducive to people who might be free this summer or are conducive to a part-time schedule. There had been some talk, a couple meetings now, where I've updated us about the efforts to renovate the Rec Center building, and we've created a subcommittee on the Rec Commission to study that. Jamie Reaver is on that committee as well, and they've started, and they're going to look at all the different funding options and the interfunding options between the Rec Center, the city, and the school district to make some recommendations to the Rec Center Commission so that we can then pass those recommendations to the City Commission. So I'm hopeful that here pretty soon we'll get some plans to renovate that building so that it can best serve our community. And thank you, Jamie, for serving on that board.
Thanks, Jeremy. Item 9A, stay survey results.
So I'm here to present state survey results along with Mrs. Judy Stanley, Assistant Superintendent of Teaching, Learning, and Student Services, Dr. Ryan Cargila, Director of Assessment and Accountability, and Mr. Jared Giffen, Director of Human Resources. So the state survey was given to all staff members in February. And so as we'll talk a little bit more, we had 387 responses. What took so long to go through were the open-ended statements. So we'll get into that a little bit more. I'm turning it over to Dr. Cargila.
Good evening, everybody. Glad to be here tonight. This is some fun data to work with. And like Dr. Harder said, it took a while because of the open-ended questions and having to analyze those. So we're going to start off with talking about who took this survey. As Dr. Harder mentioned, we had about 387 responses. So you can see from this chart that about 67% of them were licensed educators, those are your teachers. About 30% were your classified staff, and then the administrators and classified exempt took the survey. So that's kind of where it came from. So 387 responses with about 1,000 employees. So we're looking at about a third, which is really a pretty good response rate for a survey. Can you do the next slide, Casey? We also wanted to know kind of who these people were that completed the survey. So you can see from this slide that we had a lot of our new teachers, nearly a quarter of our responses were teachers within the first 3 years, which is good. And we also had a lot within the first 10 years. So over 60% of the survey respondents were within the first 10 years of being employed. So a big bubble there. And you can also see the teachers or people who completed it were 21 plus years is also 16%. So a lot of people there as well completed the survey. Okay, so getting into the survey a little bit. We mentioned that we had 387 responses. We had 24 questions, and I believe Dr. Harder put a PDF copy of the actual survey so you could see what the questions were. It was a long survey. It did collect a ton of data. It's amazing how much data we collected in those responses. 15 were multiple choice or yes or no. There are 4 purely open-ended questions, which we just gave a sentence or a question and people just responded. There were 4 of those. And then there were 5 questions that we listed some options. And then you could check box as many as you wanted. Then you could also have a blank to type other. And that's kind of another place where we got stuck a little bit because of all the others. Nearly everybody that took the survey added another. So we looked at all those as well. So when you think about these surveys a little bit, and just stay right here for a minute. When we think about these respondents, what you're going to see tonight. So you're going to see themes. Some of these themes were positive or negative, but we need to consider all those. You're also going to think about, you're going to see some percentages tonight. And for example, on the next slide, not the next slide, but the slide number, I think it's 6, when Mr. Giffen comes up, you're going to see something dealing with like 54.7% say Emporia is home. That's why they stayed. So that 54.78% represents, of the 387 responses, 54.78 of them mentioned that. So we look at total responses and how the percentage of the responses that mentioned that theme. So that's kind of what we use to give you percentages. Some other things here. We looked at some things. So if you go to the next slide. So now we'll get into the threshold because like I said, this survey produced a ton of data. We had lots and lots of different ideas. So what we did is we looked at fixed responses with other options. We also looked at a threshold because we couldn't, there's just so much data produced here. We needed to figure out what to share. So when we think about what we shared, what we're going to share tonight is we're going to share themes that have a 20% or higher response rate. So if it showed up on more than 20% of the surveys, then you're going to see it tonight. You might also see some that were close to that, but predominantly our threshold for this tonight is going to be about 20%. Are you okay with the setup? You kind of understand the background behind it. Now we're going to, these next team members are going to get into the actual results. Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Cardula, for setting the stage there. There was a lot of work that went into this. It took a lot of time to dig through the data. I primarily have 4 questions that we pulled off of the survey and some of the results from those questions that we wanted to talk about that really fit the purpose of what the STAY survey was. So the first question is, what were the top 3 reasons that you wanted employment in the district when you were first hired here? Dr. Cardula just mentioned that Emporia is our hometown, and that's why we chose here. So you can see about 55% of the respondents chose that. About 32% of the folks said this was the first offer of a position in the district. And this was certified, classified. It was open to all of our employees. About 32% or so had a spouse or significant other with a job already here in Emporia. So they had ties to the community in some fashion. There's some other ideas down here at the bottom that were mentioned a few times in that 12 to 18% range. There was a reputation of a specific district building that they wanted to work in. The quality of the district overall. There was a competitive salary, which was great to hear, and then the reputation of the district overall. So those were a few of the things as to why people chose the employment here. So on the next slide, the question that we dealt with there or looked at really heavily was, what are the top 3 reasons you've stayed here? 54% of those, again, said ties to the community. This is my hometown, or they live very close in the country or neighboring communities. A little over 50%, again, just the established ties. And then again, very similar responses on this slide as we had on the other one, whether it was up above or in the bottom in that 12 to 18% range as well. So the next slide, what are your most important reasons you want to stay here in your current position? So not only are we getting people here and kind of knowing the reasons why, but what's keeping people here? It was great to see this one at the top, 68% talked about relationships with colleagues. And then the next one, students. That's what we're all about. And I think most of the literature I've read recently talks about just the importance of the relationships. I think that's why capturing kids' hearts is such an important part of what we're doing pre-K through that 12th grade level. So relationships is key, and we know that is one of the reasons that keeps people in the jobs that they have. About 40% said relationships with a supervisor, which is fantastic to see there as well. Salary, again, great to see that a quarter of the respondents almost selected that one. The academic calendar was another one that had about 24% of the respondents. And then benefits, even though you'll see on the next slide that benefits was a reason people may not want to stay. Some people really do truly benefit from the things that we offer for our employees. A couple of other items at the bottom, which is culture and climate and length of the school day, which was interesting. So then the fourth question that we pulled were reasons that people would consider leaving. It's not the reasons that they were leaving, but why would you think about leaving? I think people may have interpreted that question a little bit differently based upon their circumstances, which is true for all of these. So again, 56% said, if I got a higher salary, I might consider leaving. The workload, we've heard about this. I know the interest-based bargaining team is something we talk about every year and how we can address that and try to make things easier for our staff members. Culture and climate was an indicator that showed up as a reason to leave. Again, that benefits piece that we just spoke about. Relationships with supervisors was on that list. District and building vision, again, that's pretty broad, but one that showed up with about 22%. And then relationships with colleagues. There were a couple of other things at the bottom as far as why people would consider leaving. As far as academic resources, I think we've made great strides in that area. We know there may be some specific areas. I talked to a teacher leaving the other day that is the only teacher teaching that subject area that didn't have a lot of resources. So we know our plan is to get to each of those areas and address the resources that they may need. And then the last one, unfortunately, was students. We know we've been encountering some student behaviors, and I anticipate that's why that showed up on that particular question.
On the next few slides, you'll see the results of our open-ended questions. This really was the area that took us the longest to analyze because in one response, let's say it was feedback for building principals or district administrators, one response may have 3 to 5 to 9 themes. And so we essentially had to analyze each one of them to pull out everything. We didn't want to miss anything. On these slides, we are not focused on the 20% threshold, and that's simply because we didn't have enough themes that popped over the 20%. And so we wanted to share more than just a couple. So it looks a little bit different than the questions that had responses to choose from. Our first question dealt with building and department leadership. And so what were those important themes? And it's really important to remember too that these themes were reflective positively for us as a district, as well as some negative feedback for us as well. So we felt like both of those were important because if they were worth mentioning, whether it was good reflection or poor reflection, that was something that was important to the staff member. So you're going to see a few of these pop up multiple times on the next few slides. First one being relationships. That is very important. You heard that on Mr. Giffen's slide. It came through loud and clear with building and department leadership as well. Communication is another area that is important to staff. And then you'll see it starts dropping down just a little bit. That instructional support and resources, those responses really focused in on the instructional coaches and strategists, and that's really primarily at that elementary level and the changes that have been made there. Professional development, and then that workload piece. When you go to district leadership, you'll also see relationships again, communication again, that instructional support and resources again, and professional development just flipped a little bit. And then the fifth theme for district leadership was that just that visibility, getting out in the building and making sure that we're out there where people can see us and we're seeing what's going on. And then we also asked a question about, in your ideal world, what would it take? What do we need to have for that ideal world? And this is where wages and benefits popped up. That communication again, right back into instructional support, resources, relationship, and workloads. So all of our open-ended comments really concentrated on areas that we've known about, we've been working on, but there was a theme all the way through. We also had a question on suggestions. What do you have for us as a school district? Tell us what would make it better.
I do this every time.
It's okay, Allison. I got you.
So sorry. This is my slide. So thanks for suggestion, but she was doing such a great entry. Gosh, I should have just, the introduction was awesome. So we also asked for things for suggestions. And so we're always looking for ideas. And Judy, feel free to throw anything in there that you'd like to share. I don't know why I do that. So 22.74%, wages and benefits. We know this is important. That's why, we talk about it at IBB. We talk about it all the time. Insurance. We have a great insurance committee and very well-attended insurance committee meetings. So staff are also committed to that. So we know that that is really important. Again, relationships, communication, those are things that we all know. These were not surprises for any of us as we were coming through the responses and looking at all the different the different themes. I do want to clarify, just like what Judy said too, that when we looked at, so the responses may have been positive or negative. There may have been constructive feedback given. There may have also been some negative feedback as well, but regardless, we looked at the themes. So the themes themselves, you'll see, are neutral. So communication, we know that we need to work on communication. We can always communicate more. Workload, we've been working on that, but not as much. That's encouraging. So 10% was workload. And then again, instructional support and resources, looking at student behavior and discipline. We've been working on that, especially this semester, working with our pre-K through elementary principals, student support specialists. How do we really work to support our student behavior and work to help them, the students, work toward positive behavior? And then how do we address the negative behavior that we're seeing? And then that accountability, the really good thing that we saw, it took a little bit to process through this, is that during exit interviews that Dr. Kemp and I did last year, we heard a lot about accountability. We are not hearing that this year. So that just says that our principals are doing a great job, teachers are doing a great job, but that accountability with students and staff. So that was very reinforcing. So looking at all the different things, like I said, it wasn't a surprise as we were going through this. There were times that it was difficult to read, it was difficult to process, but we really focused on the themes. So then looking at what we've implemented, as we have right behind the board, we have a strategic plan that was updated in March 2022. A part of that came out of that was that enrollment study. So why are students staying? Why are they leaving? A similar concept. There are continued improvement of schools through bond construction. That's all very important. Just having the groundbreaking with Riverside and Timmerman today, and looking forward to William Allen White in the fall. Capital outlay process to identify needs and wants. We appreciate Dr. McGehee coming in and really getting that input from principals and then principals from building leadership teams about what are the most important needs in the buildings, and then what are some wants. So what are the safety needs that we need to address immediately, and then what are some wants? Our pre-K through high school resources for math and ELA. I'm very proud of that. Also very thankful for our ESSER funds, because that is what's been allowing us to do that at a rate that we would not have been able to do any other time. Local and national conference opportunities for certified staff. Very proud of that. That was something that during IBB they had advocated for a number of years, and we were able to offer that last year, and we've had good responses with that, and looking for more opportunities this year. And then, of course, our recruitment efforts to fill all of our open positions. So in progress, so building improvement plans, our accreditation work. So William Allen White was our last elementary. We've had each building come and talk about building improvement plans, and that accreditation work is so important, and that we align everything with our strategic plans. Budget work through needs assessment process. So we will be working and diving more into that in June and July. So developing our budget a little bit differently through that needs assessment. Core resource adoption through an established timeline and cycle. So Judy Stanley's been working very closely with instructional coaches, strategists, lead teachers, getting input from all staff members in that area about what's that timeline and how do we implement those resources. Those input from listening tours, really talking about how do we build a better culture and more of a belongingness across our district. And so we've had some great input on that, and a lot of excitement as well, talking about a corporate challenge that is really focused on our district and maybe doing trivia nights and other things that are not necessarily athletically directed, but doing it some different types of activities. Social events, having a cookout at the beginning of the school year before school year starts with families. And so really bringing that belongingness. And some of that came about from input from staff members who talked about kind of an outcome of the pandemic is that they felt more isolated in their buildings. They don't necessarily know staff across the district. So how do we really build those relationships? Health Insurance Committee, mentioned that earlier. We continue to work on that. Doing a district podcast. So we're not always able to provide all the information, but how do we make some really short little snippets out there, 15 minutes or less, where we can talk about behind the scenes. We've highlighted food service, transportation. Part of that is also recruiting. So they can talk about exactly what those jobs are like, so people might be interested in applying for that. The social emotional behavior study group, those are our pre-K elementary principals and student support specialists, have done a lot of work, seen a lot of improvement. We're really at a place where more individualized work. We've done group work, and really, how do we work consistently across the district? We found that there were some inconsistencies there, but how do we really highlight what the strengths are and then address those growth areas? Scheduling committee, Judy Stanley's working with, that came up through the middle school, wanting to look at a different schedule. How do we have equity across the district, pre-K through secondary, also understanding it's just different. You can't have necessarily the same blocks of time at secondary that you do at elementary, but how do we provide equity? And helping each other understand that. So secondary understanding elementary and pre-K and vice versa. Interest-based bargaining, that's in process right now for certified phase 2. Thank you for approving that, because that has been very important work for the classified salary schedule. This next year, Capturing Kids' Hearts, will have that expansion from Jones Early Childhood all the way through the high school. First time that we've had pre-K through high school, Capturing Kids' Hearts, really important, really focusing on those relationships. Electronic walkthrough process, so giving that feedback to teachers and staff, also increasing the visibility of school events in school. And then childcare classrooms, really excited that hired a supervisor as of tonight. So thank you very much. That work is well underway. Judy Stanley and Pam Stranathan were making trips around to the different childcare classrooms that will be in place for next year. So we have a lot of great things happening. So, in summation, what questions do you have for us?
I guess I'll start. Probably, I think when we go up to, trying to find the slide. I think it's on page 9. It asks, are there any reasons you would consider leaving your current position with the Emporia School District? And the 3 highest, well, the first 2 highest are salary and workload, which I don't diminish. I kind of expected that. I thought that was, probably something you would expect coming into this, but I am kind of surprised to see the 53.75% saying culture climate. So can you tell me a little bit more based off of some of the open-ended questions, maybe what some of those folks who were putting that were thinking of and what was motivating them to rate that as a negative? I don't want to put you guys in the position of having to argue against yourselves, but I'd like to know what that information is.
Yep, and we just take the input that we take the input. We're not surprised at the results. So another piece of that is that we're digging more into climate next year. So that climate survey would be due next year. So that would be a time that we would implement, and we could dig in deeper with what specifically. But overall, I mean, it could be that they were not happy in their particular building, or they were not happy with particular class. It could be happy that with me or with the district leadership or other things. It could be a variety of things. So, but that goes back to how do we then increase that climate and that culture, and that sense of belongingness is really important. So how do we develop those relationships?
Are you ready to let someone else ask a question? I just didn't want to cut you off.
Yeah, I'm done for now.
Okay.
Thank you.
Jeremy, I wrote down the exact same thing as a concern, and that percentage just seemed very high. It did not surprise me, but it did seem high. And I personally think, and again, it's hard without reading the open-ended answers on everything, going back to the presentation that we saw, I think a couple meetings ago now, but we need to take action so they feel safer. They need, in terms of climate and culture, they need to feel valued. We all know and agree on that, but they need to feel safer with many things. We hear about teachers getting bitten and having things thrown at them, and no one in any job can be expected to stay there and be content for very long if that's the type of thing they're dealing with on a daily basis. And we do have some teachers dealing with that type of thing daily. And so I think safety from many different aspects is part of the culture, part of the climate, and I think we need to be listening to people and taking some action on that.
I do want to clarify, safety did not come up as a theme, and it wasn't part of culture and climate. So as you are absolutely right as far as the concerns with student behavior and some of those extreme situations, though.
So culture and climate was defined for them, like?
No, that was part of the theme. So it would just come up. But as far as an actual statement, like I don't feel safe, because they could put whatever they wanted to, but they never said, and it could have been there. They may not have with other students. I mean, I don't want to get specific, but as far as they may have been struggling with a student or struggling with response time, maybe of what's happening in the building. But then also through those behavior and those social emotional meetings that we've had this year, we've also seen a lot of improvement. Do we have work to do? Absolutely. But we've seen a lot of improvement. And like William Allen White said earlier, that their care calls have decreased significantly. So that is a positive. So, but absolutely, definitely work to do.
Okay,
Thank you.
I also have a lot of questions, and I've already shared some of my questions with Allison earlier today. And you know, the climate culture really concerns me because when we look at salary, we know how to fix that. We just need more money. We know how to fix benefits. We need more money. So those are they're hard, but we know. And the climate culture, without us having more information, because climate culture wasn't an item someone could check on the survey. So it's something that you had, as you analyze the surveys, you had to.
Yeah,
was a
yeah,
check,
it
so you-
was,
so
right.
it was
Yeah, I
climate-
was, yes, right. I
Okay.
mean, they could put that in other and that could come up, but then yes, it
Yeah.
was a checkbox
I mean,
too.
without like even quantifying what that is, I think it's hard to have a better understanding of what it means because over 50% of the respondents said it was an issue. And so I'm really struggling with like, what is that? And I guess I just have to ask the question, which I've asked, like how it is one of our goals as a board to retain and recruit the best teachers possible. And so how can we be a partner in this, in making sure that we are the best district for folks to work at? And how can we do that if we might need more data, we might need more information so that way we can make it our priority as well.
Yeah, and that was, and we talked earlier today, it was when we were at, after the Timmerman ribbon cutting, we were talking about, is that a societal kind of thing? Because education has been under attack in society and across the nation. We've seen, we've seen that. We've seen that. We've talked about teachers went from heroes to zero, and that's very frustrating because this is Teacher Appreciation Week. And so we should really be highlighting all of our educators, especially our teachers. So yes, absolutely. How do we build that culture and climate? So and thank you for that clarification because we were looking at themes, but then also that was a checkbox. Thank you.
Yeah, like everyone else, culture and climate. I do think that the climate survey next year, I hope. I mean, I hate waiting that long, right? But nothing happens overnight. So looking forward to that. As far as workload goes, I'm really interested to know how is that a quantifiable thing? And how do we compare with our workload to districts similar to our size? I don't want to make any gross assumptions, but I would think that, if you're North Lyon County or South Lyon County, your workload probably isn't as big because you don't have as many students. But I could be totally wrong because this isn't my profession. But I do wonder what our workload looks like compared to other districts our size and if that is a quantifiable number.
So I think we've spent years in IBB trying to quantify that because we want to solve the answer or come up with the answer, solve the problem. So Judy, would you like to share a little more on workload?
I think that's one of those things. I have had lots of conversations this year just asking people, talk to me about workload. What are we adding to your plate? They're having their own difficulty defining it. I'll be perfectly honest with you. That is one of the reasons why we're trying to get resources in their hands, because for years they're having to pull from everywhere. When you have to pull off the internet, I know sometimes I spend an hour looking for a 2-minute launch to a meeting, and I think that wasn't a great way to spend my time because there's so much out there on the internet. So that's what they're finding themselves doing when they're trying to find lesson plans. So we're trying to find ways to reduce that workload piece in terms of lessons. When you think about for elementary this year in particular, the loss of strategists to cover classrooms, they're having to pick up our tier 3 and our tier 2 students. So along with that, you have tier logs that have to be completed. We have to have that information because if a child were to ever need that referral process to special education, we have to have that documentation. But not only that, they're still trying to meet the needs of their tier 1. That did increase workload for all of them. When we reduced the number of instructional coaches, Well, that means some of their responsibilities went back to in the buildings and on the teachers, on the principals. So every tweak you make to something, there's always that domino. We have been asking questions. We are trying to figure that out. One of the things when we look at resources that I'll be visiting with the lead teachers this summer on is, do you want to look at, it would either be science or social studies. Are we wanting to do another adoption next year, or do you need a year for a break? You know, it's one thing if I'm a secondary teacher and that's all I teach. We can go ahead and move with the secondary adoption, but when you're an elementary teacher and you've just done a big math and you've just done ELA, are you ready to do something new again? So that's getting their input on that. Is that going to make it harder? Is that going to make it easier? I don't know that helps. It's that question we've been asking in IBB for years. And I'm finding that teachers are having a really hard time defining it. I'm going to give Mr. Kirk a little kudos. Did he leave? There he is. Last year he did, or it was last fall, he did this activity with his teachers, and he asked them to make a list of the things that are just eating their lunch. And they did. And then he asked them to separate those. What are the things I'm asking you to do? What are the things the district's asking you to do? And what are the things that you're asking yourself to do? And they're asking themselves to do a lot of things that aren't on the mandated list because it's what we do as teachers. It's what we know that kids need and what makes it fun to come to school. And so how do we find that balance? Because I'm going to tell you, when I was a teacher, if you would have told me to take some of those things, maybe Mr. Giffen as my principal didn't tell me I had to do it, or Dr. Abel, but if you told me that I had to take that away from me as a teacher, that would have been devastating. So trying to find that balance to help out is also difficult for some of them. Does that help?
Does. I really appreciate that insight. Thank you.
I think to add to Leslie's question, something that came up for me when I saw the workload data was, yeah, being a classroom teacher is a lot of work. I'm also wondering how many of our teachers are also coaches or sponsors or on committees, and how many of those are like the same 5 teachers, that are going to sign up for every committee, or they're going to work concessions at every basketball game. Because at the schools that I've worked at, it's always kind of that same group of people that are going above and beyond to support the kids and community. And that certainly adds to that feeling of like everything's falling off my plate, on top of grading and lesson planning and data and all of that too. So if we have information about all those other things that our teachers are doing that would help us get a more clearer picture of workload, I think we would be interested to see that as well.
And as principals, you go and ask the same teachers because they'll say yes. And they'll do a great job.
Well, and Judy talked about the domino effect, and we just approved the mentors, like workload, right? Which I'm so glad that our teachers want to do that. I think that's amazing that they want to be mentors for each other, but that's just more on their plate, right?
Yeah, and they have been asking for that. So yeah, we hope, and we'll revisit that. So that's why it's a pilot.
I know so much work went into this, and you've alluded to it. This is a lot of information, and I hate to say this, but I'm really just kind of left with like lingering questions and wanting more. And so to clarify, well, I guess my first question is, is it possible, and maybe we need to hire a consultant because it seems like there's a lot of data and you've all spent so much time, but even drilling down a little bit more, are there more themes in the elementary school that might not be the same in the high school? I don't know if you need to go building by building, but, just to drill down on the data a little bit more so you can isolate it, because, it's easier to maybe deal with a communications issue here if it's not anywhere else.
Yeah. And I'm very glad you brought that up, because Dr. Cardula has talked about that rather than give not necessarily the entire survey next time, but just pull those pieces out and dig in deeper. That would be what we would want people to respond. And it was a long survey. It was longer, but we wanted a lot of information. We got a lot of responses, which is why it took so long. But yes, absolutely, digging in would be important.
And then a clarifying question. I think this is where I'm feeling I have a little confusion. So kind of like slides 11 onward. So when 30.75% of the respondents identified relationships, that could be half of them could have good things to say about relationships. And so that's also
Right.
hard to read, because I read it all as really positive because I didn't have this other information. And so I think that that's where you would need like further breakdown because otherwise it leads me to think it's one way, like it's positive and it could be, completely not. I mean, I don't know. I haven't seen any information, but so I think in the future we should have that broken down more.
And I want to chime in because I kind of want to complement what you're saying. For instance, page 9 says 53.75% rated negative culture and climate, I think is the actual check mark on the survey. That was what they would have marked here to generate this response, negative culture and climate. But then you go to the slide right before it on page 8, and then it says, what are the most important reasons you want to stay in your current position with Emporia School District? Well, 68.22% said relationships with their colleagues. And so trying to understand what culture and climate means, because looking on the outside in, I would think a negative culture and climate is probably talking about my relationship with my boss, my relationship with the teachers, and how folks as employees feel. But at the same time, 68% say I've had positive relationships with my colleagues. And so I think there is some more information there that we need to pull out at some point. And I'd agree with Jamie that I don't want to saddle you guys with endless surveys and hundreds of responses to sift through that have 9 answers in one of them. So a consultant might actually be appropriate.
So I have one question related to the survey and one question sort of related to the survey. I saw you attach the Google form. Questions 8 and 9, the ones that are how likely are you to stay in the district for the upcoming year or the next 5 years? I was wondering if it was possible to see the responses to those just to kind of get an idea of where things are at because recruitment and retention is something that's important to me. And to see what the responses looked like on those questions, I think would give us a greater idea of kind of where we're going and what to anticipate. So if you have that, I don't like Google Forms will like populate into a thing. And then I was also wondering, I saw in the packet from this week that you had been doing exit interviews. And I was wondering if we were able to compile themes from exit interviews and then potentially compare them to the data in this survey to see if what people are saying just in a conversation is similar or different to what was the data gathered here.
Sure, absolutely. And we did that last year. So when we were finished with those, we brought back the themes and talked about the exit interviews. So we can do that too.
And you referenced the climate survey next year. And so the climate survey, could you explain exactly what that is and how that is different or the same as the state survey that you've done?
There's going to be some similarities, but really it's going to talk more about buildings. So it might be talking more specifically. We didn't really get into buildings, so it'll break down by buildings as well as by district.
And is that something that we would actually outsource? Because this seems like a lot of work. So
We would not be volunteering for that. So, and climate surveys have been outsourced previously. So that's not the reason that we did the state survey is because there really isn't an entity that does them that we could find. And that was consistent. It was really very broad. And so we had one that was given back in 2015, looking ahead to the 16-17 school year. And so we started with that as our foundation, but it added a lot more questions.
With respect to the climate survey in the future, what is our general participation on that? Like in terms of total population eligible to participate versus how many actually do?
How about if we bring that back to you?
That's okay.
Because
Yeah.
it's been because of the pandemic, we haven't done one. So we'll have to go back and look at that.
Is there any sort of inducement to get staff to fill those out, like a carrot and a stick?
I mean, we provide time. We try to provide, just like we encourage people to fill this out. We encourage principals to provide time for this as well.
Right, and we've talked about incentives, but if there's any way that it's trackable, then people are less likely to complete it.
That's
So
fair. Yeah,
if they're not completely anonymous, then they a lot of times don't feel comfortable
that's fair.
being honest. So yeah, I know. I was like, well, can't we give them money? No, we can't give them. Yeah. What else? We're really glad you brought this tonight. Thank you for all your hard work.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you, team.
Yes, thank you. Okay. And future board calendar dates. I believe we'll all be together for graduation this Sunday. I think everybody's planning on attending at William Lindsay White Auditorium. Oh, and Flint Hills Learning Center graduation on Friday, so there could be more than 4 of the 3 of us there, maybe.
And staff recognition.
And
I
staff
should have added
recognition
that.
next week, right? Next Wednesday, I believe. Yes. I know, but it's not in front of me. And our next meeting is Wednesday, June 14th at 6:30 here at Mary Herbert Education Center. And meeting after that, June 28th, and then again on July 12th. And with that, I would take a motion to adjourn this evening, please.
So moved.
Thank you. We have our motion in a second. Please cast your votes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.